The transport shuttle descended through the glowing shields of Vertex 7, the most famous combat training station in the galaxy. Inside, Kira Chen sat quietly by the window, watching the massive structure grow larger. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. Her face showed no emotion. Around her, other students filled the shuttle with noise. A massive Thurok warrior named Grouth was laughing loudly, his bear-like body taking up 3 seats. His thick fur was decorated with ceremonial beads. "I won 70 fights before coming here," Grouth boasted to anyone who would listen. 70 victories, without a single defeat. "The academy will be easy." Across from him, a Vrexian named Scarix clicked his mandibles in amusement. His 8 limbs were folded elegantly around his insectoid body. 70 fights against younglings, perhaps, he said. "At the academy, you will face real warriors." A Kelroth student named Crystallix hummed with a sound like ringing bells. Her body was made of living crystal that reflected rainbow colors. "My people have trained in combat arts for 10,000 years, she said proudly. "Our techniques are perfect." Kira listened to all of them. She said nothing. She simply watched and remembered every word. The shuttle docked, and students poured out into the academy's main hall. The space was enormous, with ceilings that seemed to touch the stars. Holographic displays showed famous warriors from 100 different species. Combat rings floated in the distance, suspended by gravity fields. An old Draelith waited for them in the center of the hall. His reptilian skin was covered in scars that told stories of countless battles. His 4 eyes swept across the new students with wisdom earned over centuries. "Welcome to the Galactic Combat Academy," he said. His voice was deep and commanding. "I am Headmaster Vorn. You are the finest young warriors from your worlds. Here you will become something greater." He gestured to the holographic displays. These warriors mastered combat through discipline, study, and sacrifice. Some of you will join their ranks. Most of you will fail. Kira studied the headmaster carefully. She noticed how he stood, how he moved, how he watched the students. Everything about him spoke of controlled power. "You will be assigned to training groups," Vorn continued. "Your roommates will become your teammates. Trust them with your life, because soon you will have no choice." Kira was assigned to a room with an Etherian named Lises. The Etherian was smaller than most species. With smooth purple skin that glowed softly in the dark, her large eyes were kind and curious. "Hello," Lises said cheerfully when they met. "I am so excited to be here." "Where are you from?" "Earth," Kira said simply. "Oh, a human." Lises' skin brightened with excitement. "I have never met a human before. Your species is so new to the galactic community. You must tell me everything." Kira unpacked her few belongings. "There is not much to tell." Lises tried to continue the conversation, but Kira gave only short answers. Eventually, the Aetherin stopped trying and unpacked in silence. She glanced at Kira with confusion. The human seemed friendly enough, but she was like a closed door. The next morning, training began. Instructors led the students through the academy's combat halls, explaining the rules and expectations. The students would learn hand-to-hand combat, weapon mastery, tactical thinking, and survival skills. "Physical advantages mean nothing without skill," announced Instructor Krell, a muscular board axe with 4 arms. "But skill without physical capability has limits. Know your strengths. Know your weaknesses." He looked directly at Kira. "Humans are adequate warriors, good endurance, decent adaptability, but you lack the natural weapons of a Thurok. You lack the speed of a Kelrath. You lack the multiple limbs of a Vrexian. You will need to work twice as hard to keep up." Several students glanced at Kira. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked dismissive. Grouth snorted with amusement. Kira's face showed nothing. She simply nodded. The first combat simulation began that afternoon. Students were paired randomly and placed in virtual environments. The goal was simple: defeat your opponent using any means necessary. Kira was matched against a Zenthor warrior, species known for their quick reflexes and venomous claws. The simulation placed them in a rocky canyon environment. The Zenthor attacked immediately, its claws flashing toward Kira's throat. She dodged, but barely. He was faster than she expected. She blocked his next strike, feeling the impact rattle through her arms. For 3 minutes, Kira fought defensively. She avoided killing blows but took several minor hits. The Zenthar warrior was skilled and confident. Finally, Kira found an opening and delivered a solid kick to his midsection. He stumbled back. She followed with a combination that ended the match. Victory. But not impressive. When the simulation ended, Instructor Krell reviewed her performance. "Adequate," he said. "You survived and won. But your movements were basic. You have much to learn." Kira bowed respectfully. "Yes, Instructor." That night, back in their room, Lisa's tried again to talk with her quiet roommate. "You did well today," she said encouragingly. "That Zenther was very fast." It was Kira agreed. She sat at her desk, making notes on a data pad. "What are you writing?" "Observations," Kira said. Lisa's curiosity grew. "About what?" "Fighting styles. Movement patterns. Everyone has habits." Lisa's moved closer and looked at the screen. It was filled with detailed notes about every student they had met. Strengths, weaknesses, preferred techniques, psychological traits. "You are studying all of us?" Lisa's asked, surprised. Kira looked up at her roommate. For the first time, she smiled slightly. "Knowledge is the best weapon," she said simply. Over the following weeks, Kira maintained the same pattern. She trained hard but never stood out. She won some fights and lost others. She volunteered for support roles during team exercises rather than leadership positions. She watched everything and said little. Instructors began to dismiss her as another average student. Grouth openly mocked her during training sessions. The soft human, he called her. No claws, no fangs, no spine. Kira never responded to the insults. She simply watched Grouth carefully, noting how he moved, how he thought, how he fought. LYSS grew more puzzled by her roommate each day. Kira was clearly intelligent and skilled, but she seemed to hide it deliberately. Why would someone come to the greatest combat academy in the galaxy and then try to be invisible? One night, Lisa's asked her directly, "Why do you hold back?" Kira looked up from her notes. "What makes you think I am holding back?" "I see how you watch everyone. I see your notes. You understand combat better than you show." Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Humans are not the strongest or fastest. We survive by being smart. Smart warriors watch and learn before they act." "But when will you act?" Kira returned to her notes. When it matters. The weeks turned into months. The Academy's midterm tournament was approaching. It would determine class rankings and decide who would advance to elite training. Every student prepared with intense focus, and Kira watched, and learned, and waited. Her time was coming. The Silent Learner Part 2. Patterns in the Silence, 3 months into training. The Academy had established its social hierarchy. Grouth the Thurok dominated physical challenges. Scarix, the Vrexian, excelled at technical combat. Christelix, the Kelroth, led in tactical simulations. These 3 were acknowledged as the top students. Kira Chen remained somewhere in the middle of the rankings. Not weak enough to be eliminated, not strong enough to be noticed. Exactly where she wanted to be, but Lisa's was beginning to see through the illusion. The Etherian watched her roommate with growing fascination. Every evening, Kira spent hours reviewing combat footage from the day's training. She would watch the same sequences repeatedly, sometimes in slow motion, analyzing every movement. Kira's datapad contained files on every single student. The notes grew more detailed each day. She recorded fighting stances, reaction times, preferred attack angles, even psychological patterns like whether a student fought more aggressively when angry or became cautious after taking damage. "You have been watching Grouth for 20 minutes, Lisa's observed one evening. "That is the 3rd time you have reviewed his match today." Kira did not look away from the screen. He drops his left shoulder before charging. Every single time. It is a tell, a signal, a habit that reveals his next move. "Everyone has them." Lisa sat down beside her. "You have files on everyone. Even me." Kira paused the video. Yes. What does mine say? Kira pulled up the file. You favor mobility over direct confrontation. You use your bioluminescence to distract opponents in close combat. You are faster than you appear. Your weakness is that you hesitate before committing to finishing strikes. You are too kind. Lisa's blinked in surprise. Every observation was accurate. How did you learn all this? By watching. By listening. Humans are not naturally strong, so we learn to be observant. We study our opponents. We find patterns. We adapt. But why hide your skills? Lisa's asked. Why not show the instructors what you can do? Kira closed the datapad. Because warriors who show everything too early give away their advantages. The best fighters are the ones you underestimate. The next day brought a new challenge. A senior student named Scarix announced he would hold open sparring sessions for lower-ranked students. It was supposedly to help them improve, but everyone knew it was really about showing dominance. Scarix was in his final year at the academy. He had won numerous tournaments and was considered one of the finest Phyrexian warriors of his generation. His 8 limbs gave him overwhelming advantages in close combat. Who wants to test themselves against a champion? Scarix asked, his mandibles clicking with amusement. Several brave students volunteered. Each lasted less than 2 minutes. Scarix was not cruel, but he was thorough. He demonstrated the vast gap between their skills and his own. Then his 4 eyes fixed on Kira, the human. You have been here for months, yet I have never seen you truly fight. Come, show us what your species can do. Kira stood slowly. Around the training hall, students gathered to watch. This would be entertaining. The quiet human against a senior champion. Everyone expected it to be over quickly. Kira stepped into the combat ring. She showed no fear, but also no aggression. She simply waited. Ready position, Instructor Krell announced. Scarix moved first, his limbs flowing like water. He was fast, far faster than any opponent Kira had faced at the academy. His strikes came from multiple angles simultaneously. But Kira is not where he expected her to be. She slipped past his first combination with minimal movement. When he adjusted and attacked again, she blocked with precise timing, redirecting his force rather than meeting it head-on. She was not winning, but she was surviving. 3 minutes passed, then 5. The crowd grew quiet. Kira had not landed a single significant blow, but Scarix had not defeated her either. She defended, evaded, and absorbed his attacks with frustrating efficiency. Scarix increased his speed, using advanced techniques that should have overwhelmed any lower-ranked student. Kira adapted. She seemed to read his movements just before they happened, responding to tells and patterns that others could not see. At the 8-minute mark, Scarix finally broke through her defense with a feint combination. His limbs struck her shoulder and she fell to one knee. The match was over. Victory, Scarix, Instructor Krell announced. But the senior warrior did not celebrate. He stood over Kira with a confused expression. How? He asked quietly. You should not have lasted 3 minutes. Kira stood and bowed respectfully. You are very skilled. That is not an answer. You moved like you knew what I would do before I did it. How? Kira met his eyes calmly. I watched you fight others. You have patterns. Everyone does. She walked out of the ring, leaving Scarix staring after her with new respect. Around the hall, students whispered. The human had lost, but somehow it felt different than the other losses. She had made a champion work harder than he expected. Growth approached Kira in the corridor after training. The massive Thurok blocked her path with his bulk. You made Scarix look slow, he growled. But you still lost. You will always lose because humans are weak. Kira looked up at him without flinching. Perhaps when the tournament comes, if we face each other, it will be over in seconds. Perhaps, Kira repeated. Growth snorted and walked away. Unsatisfied by her lack of reaction, that evening, Lisa's found Kira reviewing footage of Growth's recent matches. Again, you were obsessed with him, the Etherin said. He will be my opponent in the tournament, Kira said. The brackets are predictable based on current rankings. How do you know? I calculated the probabilities. We will face each other in the first round. Lisa's watched the determination in her roommate's eyes. You are planning to beat him. Kira said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. Over the following weeks, Kira's pattern continued. She remained unremarkable in daily training, but her notes grew more sophisticated. She was not just recording fighting styles anymore. She was analyzing breathing patterns, energy management, psychological triggers, and environmental awareness. She spent extra hours in the Academy's gravity chambers, training her body in conditions that mimicked different species' homeworlds. She practiced against holographic opponents programmed with the exact fighting styles of her. Classmates Instructor Krell noticed her dedication, though he said nothing. The old Bordax had seen many students over his years of teaching. Something about this human reminded him of warriors who came to the Academy with secrets. One night, Lisa's woke to find Kira's bed empty. She searched and found her roommate in one of the training halls practicing alone in the dark. Kira moved through combat forms with fluid precision, blending techniques from multiple species into something entirely unique. Lisa's watched from the shadows, finally understanding. Kira was not learning to fight like other species. She was learning to fight like a human who had studied every other species. She was creating something new. When Kira finally noticed her, Lisa's asked, "Were you always this good?" Kira was quiet for a long moment. "I have trained before." "How long?" "Long enough." Lisa's knew she would get no more information. But she was certain now that her quiet roommate was hiding something significant. Something that would shock everyone when it was finally revealed. The midterm tournament was announced for the following month. The entire Academy buzzed with anticipation. Rankings would be established. Reputations would be made or broken. Champions would emerge, and Kira Chen continued her silent preparation, watching everything, learning everyone. Waiting for the moment when all her observations would matter, the patterns were clear now. She had mapped every opponent. She had found every weakness. She had prepared for every scenario. Soon, everyone would see what a human could do when they fought smart instead of strong. Soon, the silent learner would speak with action. The tournament was coming, and Kira was ready. The Silent Learner, Part 3, The Academy Tournament. The morning of the midterm tournament arrived with great ceremony. The main combat arena had been transformed into a spectacular venue. Floating platforms surrounded the central fighting ring. Holographic displays showed the tournament bracket for all to see. Students from all years gathered to watch. The midterm tournament was a tradition that determined which first-year students would advance to elite training. Only the top 8 would receive that honor. The rest would continue standard instruction or, in some cases, be asked to leave the academy. Headmaster Vorn stood at the center of the arena. His 4 eyes swept across the assembled students. "Today, you prove your worth," his voice boomed. "Not through words, but through action. Honor your teachers. Honor your species. Honor yourselves." The bracket appeared on the massive display. Just as Kira had predicted, she was matched against Growth in the first round. The crowd murmured. It seemed like an unfair pairing. The human against the Academy's most physically dominant student. Growth saw the bracket and laughed loudly. "The soft human," he announced to those around him. "This will be over before it begins. I will try not to hurt her too badly." Lisa's found Kira in the preparation room. "Are you nervous?" The Etherean asked. Kira was stretching calmly. "No. Growth is very strong." "Everyone thinks? I know what everyone thinks," Kira interrupted gently. "That is the advantage." Other matches proceeded first. A Kelarath warrior defeated a Zenthor in a display of crystalline precision. 2 Bordak students engaged in a brutal test of forearmed combat. Scarix easily advanced past his first-round opponent, his 8 limbs moving with deadly efficiency. Finally, the announcement came. First ring, next match. Growth of Thurok Prime versus Kira Chen of Earth. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. This would be the entertainment between serious matches. A quick demonstration of Thurok's superiority before moving on to real competition. Growth entered the ring first. raising his massive arms to acknowledge the cheering students. He was nearly twice Kira's size, covered in thick fur and natural muscle that could bend steel. His claws were retracted for the match, but his strength alone was devastating. Kira entered quietly. She wore the standard academy training suit. No decorations. No ceremony. She simply walked to her position and waited. Instructor Krell stood as referee. Standard tournament rules. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or ring exit. Lethal force is forbidden. Combatants ready? Both nodded. Again. Growth charged immediately, exactly as Kira knew he would. His left shoulder dropped slightly just before the movement. She was already moving when he started, sliding to his right side. His weaker side, his massive arms swept through empty air where she had been standing. Growth spun, surprisingly fast for his size, and attacked again. Kira ducked under his strike and delivered a quick blow to his midsection. It was like hitting stone. Growth did not even flinch. You hit like a child, he laughed, but Kira was not trying to hurt him yet. She was testing him, confirming her observations, measuring his speed, his reach, his recovery time between strikes. Everything matched her predictions perfectly. Growth pressed his attack, using his size to dominate the space. He forced Kira toward the ring's edge. The crowd leaned forward. This was it. One more push, and the human would be out. But Kira dropped suddenly, rolling under his legs and coming up behind him. Before Growth could turn, she delivered 3 precise strikes to pressure points in his lower back. Nerve clusters that she had identified during months of observation. Growth roared in pain and surprise. His left leg buckled slightly. The damage was not permanent, but it disrupted his balance. Impossible, someone in the crowd whispered. She heard him. Now Kira changed her strategy. She stopped retreating and began to attack, not with raw power, but with precision. They came back, Hayes confirmed. The rescued became rescuers. Captain Vexrel watched as the fleet formed a protective line around both damaged ships. The odds had changed completely. The Krell fleet hesitated, suddenly facing a coalition rather than easy prey. Admiral Corvell's voice came over the open channel, broadcasting to all ships. This is Admiral Corvell of the Valorian Empire. These humans risked everything for my brother and his crew. Today, we stand with humanity. All ships, prepare to engage, the Zentari commander added. Humanity saved our children. Today, we repay that debt. The tide had turned completely. Hash lost in deep space until a human warship answered without hesitation. Hash hash. Part 5. Never alone, the Krell fleet commander broadcast a message. His voice filled with uncertainty for the first time. This is unexpected. You call this an alliance? A random collection of different species? Admiral Corvell responded immediately. We call this justice. You attacked people under human protection. Now face the consequences. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recent galactic history. It wasn't nation against nation or empire against empire. It was something new. Something that had never existed before in quite this way. It was species standing together because it was right. The Valorian cruisers moved with military precision, their experienced crews coordinating perfectly with each other. The Zentari Defense Wing used unconventional tactics, swarming and overwhelming individual Krell ships. The Morellian frigates were like surgical knives, striking weak points with incredible accuracy, and in the center of it all, the Indomitable fought like a wounded tiger, damaged but deadly, protecting the Star Whisper while simultaneously coordinating the entire coalition fleet. Krell ship targeting the medical vessel. Lieutenant Hayes called out. Intercept, Commander Chen ordered. Don't let them touch that hospital ship. The Zentari ships moved immediately, placing themselves between the Krell and the defenseless medical vessel. They took hits meant for the healers, their shields flaring under the assault. One Krell ship broke formation, trying to make a run at the Star Whisper, but it found itself facing the combined firepower of a Valorian cruiser, 2 Morellian frigates, and the Indomitable's remaining weapons. The Krell ship didn't stand a chance. Seeing their forces being systematically defeated, the remaining Krell fleet began to retreat, but Admiral Corvell's voice cut through the chaos. Krell vessels, you are not leaving. You came here to prey on the helpless. Now face those who defend them. The battle continued, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. One by one, the Krell ships were disabled or destroyed. Those who tried to flee found their jump drives targeted and disabled before they could escape. The Krell had learned a hard lesson about attacking people under protection. When the last Krell ship finally surrendered, the Coalition fleet held their fire. Commander Chen's voice came over the open channel. Surviving Krell vessels, you will drop all weapons, surrender your crews, and submit to Galactic Council justice. Any attempt to resist will be met with immediate force. Defeated pirates had no choice but to comply. As the adrenaline of battle faded, the reality of what happened began to sink in. Captain Vexrel stood on his bridge looking at the display showing all the ships that had come to their aid. Ships from 5 different species. United by a simple principle that humanity, shown them, help those who need it. The repairs to both the Star Whisperer and the Indomitable were completed with the combined efforts of the entire fleet. Engineer Tylera worked alongside Marcus and engineering teams from 4 other species, sharing knowledge and techniques. You know what's funny? Marcus said as they finished the final repairs. A year ago, most of these species wouldn't have worked together. Too much history, too many old grudges. But humans showed up and just started helping everyone without caring about politics. I think we reminded people what actually matters. Tylara nodded slowly. You changed something. Maybe you changed everything. Days later, after the Star Whisperer was fully repaired and ready to head home, Captain Vexrel requested one final meeting with Commander Chen. This time, he wasn't alone. Admiral Corvell, the Zentari wing commander, and representatives from the other species joined them. Commander Chen, Vexrel began formally. We owe you more than we can ever repay. Not just my crew, but all of us. You've shown us something we had forgotten. Admiral Corvell stepped forward. Humanity has been in space for barely a century. Most council races dismissed you as primitive, as too emotional, as reckless. We were wrong. The Zentari commander, a being whose name translated to Flower of Spring, spoke next. Her voice was musical and filled with gratitude. 70 years ago, humans saved my great-grandmother when she was a child on that refugee ship. My entire family exists because humans chose compassion over convenience. Today, we returned that gift. Commander Chen looked uncomfortable with all the praise. We just did what anyone should do, but most don't, the Morellian representative said, his voice clicking through his translator. Most species calculate costs and benefits. Most species ask what they'll gain. Humans just ask who needs help. Admiral Corvell handed Chen a data tablet. I'm returning to Valoria with my brother. I will be testifying before the Galactic Council. I'm proposing that humanity be granted full council status immediately, not in the decades-long probationary period usually required. Chen's eyes widened. Admiral, that's not necessary. We don't need recognition. Perhaps not, Corvell agreed. But we need you. The council has become bureaucratic and cautious. We've forgotten what we're supposed to stand for. Humanity remembered. Or perhaps humanity never forgot in the first place. He gestured to the assembled representatives. Every species here has been helped by humans at some point. We came together today not because of treaties or alliances, but because of simple gratitude and the recognition that humanity represents something the galaxy desperately needs. What's that? Chen asked quietly. Hope, Vexrel answered. The hope that good actions matter. That helping others isn't weakness. That standing for what's right isn't naive. You've shown us that power means nothing if not used in service of those who need it. The meeting ended with formal exchanges of gratitude and promises to stay in contact. As the ships prepared to depart, Tylara found Marcus one last time. Will I see you again? She asked. Marcus smiled. Space is big, but humanity likes to wander. I'm sure our paths will cross. He handed her a small device. This has some human engineering tricks and techniques. Non-classified stuff, but useful. Maybe they'll help you think differently about problems. Thank you, Tylera said. for everything. For showing us what we should be, the ships departed one by one, each heading to their home systems. But something had changed in the galaxy. Word of what happened spread quickly. The story of a human warship that answered a distress call without hesitation. The story of species coming together to protect the protectors. 6 months later, Commander Chen stood in her quarters on the Indomitable, which had been fully repaired and upgraded as a gift from the Valorian Empire. She held a message from Captain Vexrel. Commander Chen, I thought you should know. The Star Whisper has been recommissioned as a patrol vessel. Our mission is to answer distress calls in dangerous sectors, just as you did for us. Engineer Talara is now our chief engineer, and she's installed some of those human improvisations you taught her. There was a photo attached. It showed the Star Whisper's crew, smiling with their ship in the background. On the whole, painted in both Valorian and English, were the words, "Help is on the way." Message continued, "We learn from the best." Humanity showed us that the measure of a species isn't its weapons or technology. It's what you do when someone needs help and no one is watching. Thank you for teaching us that lesson. We'll carry it forward. Chen smiled and set down the message. Through her viewport, she could see stars stretching endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, people might be in trouble. Someone might need help. And when they called, someone would answer, because that's what humanity had taught the galaxy. That no one should ever be alone in the dark. That help is always on the way. That when someone needs you, you show up. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Hayes entered her office. Commander, we've received a distress call from an unknown vessel. They're 2 sectors away. Engines failed. Life support critical.
How?
Chen stood immediately. Set course. Maximum speed. It might be a trap, Hayes warned. Unknown species. Dangerous sector. Chen smiled. Then, we'll deal with that when we get there. Right now, someone needs help. That's all that matters. As the Indomitable turned toward the distress signal, accelerating through the darkness, Chen thought about all the species humanity had helped over the years. The Zentari refugees, the Moralian merchants, the Valorians lost in deep space. And now, whoever was calling for help out there in the void, they didn't know that help was coming. They didn't know that they wouldn't face their crisis alone. They didn't know that a human warship had heard their call. But they would learn. Just as others had learned, just as the galaxy was learning that humanity had made a choice about what kind of species they wanted to be. The kind who showed up. The kind who helped. The kind who stayed when things got hard. The kind who answered without hesitation. And in doing so, they had sparked something in the galaxy. A reminder of what civilizations should aspire to be. Not the strongest, or the richest, or the most advanced, but the kind who, when they heard someone crying out in the darkness, turned toward the sound and said the most important words in any language, "We're coming. Hold on. You're not alone anymore." The Indomitable jumped to FTL, racing toward someone in need, carrying with it the promise that made humanity special, that when you called for help, humans would answer, every time, without hesitation. The end.